This is part of the Marketing Club of New York. They are hosting us today. They've been very grateful to do so. So, quick thing, I think this is our 40th year as a club. We're celebrating
40th years for Silver Apple.
Silver Apple. So
this
how long?
is the club was started in, ready for this, 1926.
All right. So, guys,
I was around.
What kind of marketing did they do in 1926?
It was dedicated.
Like face to face?
No, it was called the 100 Million Club originally, and it was dedicated to direct mail advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and now we're
refers to
here.
how much mail they were putting out.
100 million
100
pieces.
million pieces.
100 million
Yeah.
pieces.
That's where the name came from.
And now we're here talking about connected TV and
TV.
targeted ads. So we're staying in the same vein, guys.
Data-driven
But we're in 2024. So, guys, a little bit about Focus USA. We are also celebrating a happy anniversary actually next week. We're turning 30 years old. And we just want to send a big thank you to all of our clients and partners that have helped make that happen.
Ready?
Oh, okay. All right, so guys, I have locked in, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here, a really great panel to come speak to you guys today and share their expertise. Here they are, and then here they are in person. So I'm gonna let you guys do some of your own intros. We'll start with Shane.
Hi, nice to be here today. Shane Holmes. I work for a company called Constellation. We started off as an agency, but we've gotten more into the ad tech side of the business, primarily focusing on auto, but really getting heavily involved in any highly regulated, compliant industry. That's really our sweet spot and our niche. So it's great to be here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Andrew Barbuto, work at Basis Technologies, artist formerly known as Centro, senior agency lead, been there for about a little over 5 years. If you're not familiar with Basis, we are sort of a hybrid company where we own our own DSP, demand side platform. We also have a services business, so we do search and social as well, and we do manage programmatic. And so that's really the two sides of the business, is the software side, where we work with agencies that license our software to streamline automation, streamline processes, as well as buy programmatically. And then we also, execute media on their behalf as well.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, and you, Andrew has some news. You're going to be a published author.
Yes, I'm actually publishing a book, and comes out next month on pre-order, called Top Sales Producer: How to Crush Your Sales Quota. If you guys are in sales, which it seems like a lot of you are, check it out. It'll be on Amazon.
Great. And then we have Emily. Yeah.
Follow, I don't know. Hi, I'm Emily Kistner. I just joined Captify 2 weeks ago. I was at Adstra, so formerly ALC, Marketing Club. So I'm new over to Captify, leading their TV business. Captify is collecting that first-party search data. So once you leave the open web and you're searching on, hotels.com for San Diego, and you're going on that journey within a website's search bar, that's the data we collect, build audience profiles off of that, learn what the consumer journey, what your intent, what your mood, your sentiment is, and create audiences for media activation, and then measure lift in search after a campaign. And so I'm responsible for putting that data on television.
Very relevant to today's conversation.
Yeah, still relevant.
Thank you, guys.
Perfect.
So, CTV, why we're all here. Do one of you want to do a quick synopsis on what CTV is?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot.
We might all have different answers, so that's really great.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go? I can if you want. Connected TV is just a TV that's connected to the internet, right? So there was a lot of terminology, I feel like, that got thrown around when it first started getting popular, right? OTT, Connect TV. For a long time, people couldn't figure out what they were. But I think the industry is pretty much settled on the fact that OTT is like the umbrella term of basically full episode player content, so professionally produced TV-like content, which could be watched on your phone, your tablet, or your television. Whereas when you're talking about Connect TV, you're really just talking about when you're watching that type of content on the TV screen. Right, so more about the device versus OTT, where you could really think about it as the type of content that you're watching.
Yeah, I would define it as just any television you watch over the internet instead of from like a cable in the ground.
Yeah. So quick, who's cut their cable? Like who still watches cable and who does not? Like who's cut the cord, right? Who's watching stuff on Hulu, on Roku, on Netflix, on Prime? Yeah, that's pretty much everybody. Right, exactly. So if you're doing that, you're experiencing connected TV ads. I got it. So why is this important and why are we talking about it? Sounds pretty cool, targeted ads, everybody here's pretty used to that. Well, we care about it because that's where our customers are. We care about it because it's a growing viewership. According to eMarketer, we're reaching 233 million individuals are engaging with connected TV this year. And the time that they're spending on that is averaging over 2 hours. And that's consistently growing. And that's just what we can measure right now. I'm not even 100% sure that's accurate. I think it's actually on the low side. Ad spend, people are spending more and more money. I think we're at 23 billion, yes, that was with a B, billion dollars by the end of this year. And we are seeing a lot of more budgets moving into the connected TV space, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more here. So as we get started, Andrew, can I ask you to introduce some of the trends with these subscription platforms?
Yeah.
What are some of the trends going on right now?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been a really exciting time for connected TV and anybody who works in digital media, for that matter, over the past couple years especially. Because when connected TV was originally, the promise of connected TV really started out with Netflix, and Netflix, part of their value proposition was they didn't have advertising, right? And so for a long time, people were watching connected TV without seeing ads. But I think Wall Street had something to say about the fact that their growth kind of plateaued, right? And since Netflix is the leader of the major streaming services, everybody kind of follows the leader. So when Netflix came out in 2022 and said, we're going to come out with advertising, then naturally Disney Plus came out with them. Amazon, you had the luxury, if you wanted to maintain having no ads, all you had to do is pay $3 more a month, which I'm sure most people chose not to do for Amazon Prime Video. So anyway, all of these platforms were previously not ad supported. It was all subscription based exclusively. Now, most are actually ad supported. And the industry's been moving in that direction for a while now. And I think that one of the biggest drivers of that is the fact that people, they're cracking down on cord cutting. I mean, on password sharing, right? So like everybody was on their parents' Netflix, or your cousin's Netflix, or your, people you don't even know. Now they're not letting you do that, right? So like they're making you pay for it. And so would you rather pay $6.99 and see some ads, or would you rather pay $20 and not see ads? And a lot of people are choosing not to pay $20, and they'll put up with the advertising, right? So as Netflix has really gotten their feet under them, took them a little while at the gate, but I think they're up to somewhere like 50 million users now that are ad supported. Disney Plus, they're all getting their feet under them. Amazon. As more and more people are migrating to these ad-supported streaming services, that's where the eyeballs are going, and so therefore that's where the ad dollars are going, right? And so there's been this trend of cord cutting and people cutting, getting away from cable for a long time, but they weren't going to another ad-supported solution like they are now. And so all of the dollars are pretty much migrating from cable to Connect TV. Connect TV, so when I say Connect TV, I'm really referring to OTT, right? So, any sort of the major ones, Max, Paramount, Peacock, Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime Video. Yeah, there you go. And there's more to it as well. I won't take up too much time. So, fast services are ones where it's basically cable streamed over the internet. So if you have like DirecTV Stream or Hulu Plus Live TV or YouTube TV is a big one, right? That's a different category than the standalone apps. But that's another form of Connect TV because it's connected to the internet. And then the third category, which is the last one, and it's free ad-supported streaming services, right? So if you want YouTube TV, I don't know if anybody has one of those, you pay for it. You pay for it just like you would a cable service. It's cheaper, but you still pay for it. Whereas there are free services that are exclusively subsidizing with advertising. So Pluto, I think, is one of them. Fubo's actually paid, but there's several of them, and so that's another fast growing of ad-supported streaming. the dollars are following where the eyeballs are going.
So, I mean, hearing that, it's just the audience and the exposure to these types of ads is just growing and growing and growing because technology providers and brands that we've watched for decades are just finding more ways to expose their audiences to these ads. Shane, can I ask you how that plays into storytelling and creative development?
Yeah, I think as it relates to that, the thing that I would say is because connected TV or OTT is targeted, you can have a much more specific ad. You can still have that storytelling arc narrative, but it can be a lot more specific and dialed into who the end target consumer is. I think that's really the difference at the end of the day, but the storytelling is still just as important as it was in traditional media. It's just now we can be a little bit more dialed into our specific message to that audience.
Yeah. And then measuring if it works, right? Measuring the lift and the performance.
I think that's been the interesting thing. We predominantly work in auto, and automotive manufacturers a lot of the manufacturers have what they call certified programs, and so they have specific partners in the space where they've negotiated margins and fees and what's going to media. Problem with it is a lot of them are working with aggregators, and so the money just goes into a dark hole. And they show you impressions and they show you video completion rates, but they really don't show you a lot past that. So to your point, how are you measuring lift, especially for a local dealer that's maybe only spending $5,000 or $10,000? Like, what does that look like? So there are companies, and we're one of them, where we're trying to peel back some of the layering to show attribution from an IP perspective. How many mobile devices within a household went onto a website? The problem with that is dealers and consumers, our clients, automatically go back and revert to, oh, so I should be looking at how many website visits I got or how many leads. It's like, no. It's a byproduct, but it's not the end-all, be-all measurement to show success. And so I think, unless you're dealing with huge, six-figure budgets where you can do brand lift studies and things like that, it's still a challenge to correctly position, but then show ROI at the same time.
Yeah. Emily, do you have anything to speak to on that, on insights and measurement and what's available in the space now?
Yeah, well, I don't know the level of the room. Who here has bought or sold a CTV ad? Okay, so like a fair amount. What I was thinking of as you guys were talking is just how operationally easier CTV is than cable advertising. To plan a spot on a linear schedule, actually schedule an ad, to ship the commercial through a special platform, you had to be set up through Extreme Reach or something like that. The turnaround time is weeks instead of same day. So same thing for measurement. You have to wait for the logs to verify. You have to wait for an ads run, to even tell if the ad played, wait for your preemptions. CTV, you can schedule an ad to start running like that afternoon. So that's where I was thinking. And same thing with measurement, you're getting the ad log immediately. So at Captify, we're getting search data as the campaign's playing, and we can optimize the creative overlay. Search terms in the word Honda and price are popping. So now we're going to make the overlay on the CTV ad call out that it's the price, the discount, the whatever. You can optimize your messaging on these formats in just such an operationally easier way on CTV than TV, and the cost is so much lower. So like these local advertisers, you don't need $1 million. You can do, $20,000. You can run a campaign for your sale for the week.
Yeah. So it's the real-time optimization, the real-time content shifts that you can do, has not been available before, especially in like a linear TV environment.
I would just add to that really quickly. I think that when compared to linear TV, Connect TV has a ton of measurement, right? Like a ton of measurement, a ton of targeting.
Yep.
When compared to other forms of digital, it's actually very limited, right? So there's less that you can do, especially from a measurement standpoint, because it's on a TV screen, right? It's very difficult. You can't really tie, and there's not a cookie-based environment. The rest of digital, for the most part, is all based on cookies. And so that's how you tie a single impression to an action. And without those cookies and the fragmented space that Connect TV is, see, these are just a few of them, right? There's less tracking, both in terms of being able to measure ROI and to be able to see what programs you're in on. So it's this weird area where it's like the TV buyers are used to seeing what their programs were running on, right? They're used to seeing what TV, like what spots they ran on. They could actually see the content. Whereas with digital, you're used to seeing, whether somebody served an ad, then took an action. But with KTV, you kind of, it's in the middle. You get a little bit of both, but you don't get the granularity as you do in digital, and you don't get as much of the transparency as you do in linear, but you get at least some data that you can tie to the campaign.
Yeah.
Is there no advertising identifier
There
in
is.
CTV like there is in digital display?
There is, but since it's such a fragmented space, that they're siloed, and so that's why you can do some targeting, right? That's why you can do some targeting, especially if you're in one ecosystem, right? If you have an ID that's tied to that person, that one login, but with digital, it's persistent. So your cookie's going to follow you around the internet wherever you go, right? Since it's more siloed, that's why you don't get as much tracking and measurement with Connect TV in comparison to digital, but some because there is that ID.
Yeah. But I think, some of the value that people are seeing the value, right? I think there was a stat, yes, 4 in 10 marketing professionals are actually taking budgets from linear TV, they're putting it with connected TV. And I think a lot of companies, at least in my experience, that haven't done TV at all are getting into the game now because of the personalization, it's more cost effective, and it's not as much as a lift to actually make the buy, right? So, Andrew, can you talk about that shifting landscape?
Sure. So now advertisers who previously wouldn't be able to afford TV can. So I'm sure you see it if you guys watch a lot of streaming. You see more obscure advertisers that you wouldn't necessarily see if you're watching CBS or ABC, right? It's because now you can buy it much easier, and so now what you have is this much less of a barrier to entry to run on the TV screen. But sorry, what did you want me to go?
No, just lay of the land.
With respect
Linear's going down.
Oh yeah, well the
connected
linear
TV's
has been
up.
going down for a while. It's going in the direction of mail and newspapers. No offense to those, but people.
Shame.
No offense. Sorry, I didn't know. But anyways, cable is still a thing, right? But it's slowly dying, and it's been going that way for quite some time, and especially with younger people. So people that are younger tend to cut the cord, and so the reason why dollars are transitioning even more so than the additional targeting that you can get and the measurement is because that's where the consumers are, and now they can reach them because more of the streaming is ad supported, right? So it's a more inventory available, which wasn't available before. So like Amazon Prime Video, you would never be able to reach somebody on there beforehand unless you did a custom content integration. Now you can run ads on it, right? Like Netflix, that's been the holy grail. Advertisers have been trying to get access to them forever. Now you can. So what's happened is that the people have been moving over to cable for quite some time. They just haven't been able to be reached by advertisers. Now they can, and that's only going to continue going forward.
It's also interesting to think about in connected TV. So on a linear schedule, there's however many commercial breaks per hour, 16 per hour. That's it. CTV, it's dynamically served, so the more you watch, the more ads you get. It's an unlimited ad inventory. So for a buyer, you're not maxing out. Where you used to put a spot on the football game on Thursday night, however many people saw that ad. Now it's how much ad inventory is there. The more people watch, the more there is. So
And
does the consumer behavior, does the consumer expect a linear TV experience with CTV? And also, how has the creative changed? So, you used to spend $100,000 car create an ad.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of money to
Yeah.
create an ad for broadcast. How has that changed now that we're getting into CTV? And is the consumer expecting a linear experience in CTV?
I think there's some of both.
I can speak from just personal experience. I've been in, automotive and marketing for almost 20 years now. We cut the cord several years ago, and I was on Hulu, and it wasn't that same feeling. I couldn't surf. Not that I want to or need to. I feel like at least YouTube TV, which is what we're on now, still gives a little bit of that familiar experience from traditional viewership, but it's still on-demand viewership. So I can be in my car, I can be in my house, I can be on vacation, and I can log into my YouTube TV account, and all my programming's there, my channels, the way I have them set up, like that content follows me wherever I go. So I would say that's one of the big differences, like from connected to traditional, is I have that unique experience, but it's evolved. So it's a little bit more interactive and a little bit more sophisticated. As far as the content goes, the only thing I see different from the content side comes back to maybe we're doing 5s or 7s if it's, you know, a specific campaign. Maybe we're doing 15s more. Like the ability to really change the length and timing of the spots gives you more versatility, and I think gives you more efficiencies, especially if you're doing a full-on out branding type campaign where you've got, you know, the 60 and then you're breaking it down to the 30s, and then from there you might, and that the efficiencies are there as well, because I don't need to reach the whole DMA. I just need to reach these people that are going to be in market for a vehicle in the next 90 to 120 days. So those efficiencies, I think, offset some of the cost as well.
I would just add to that. I think that when you talk about the quality of the advertising, it also it depends on where you're watching your streaming too, right? So like Netflix, if you watch Netflix, I don't know if anybody has with ads, they're working with national big advertisers that are very expensive to advertise on them. So it feels more like TV. But if you watch Hulu, right, it's a little bit of a lower barrier to entry, and so you're going to see more long tail advertisers. Maybe the quality won't be as good as like a T-Mobile ad, right? It feels less like the traditional TV because you're also seeing new advertisers you wouldn't necessarily see. I would probably compare it to, in a certain respect, to like a national TV buy with cable versus a local buy. You could see your local dealer and it's a guy talking into the camera, right? Whereas you see that's clearly like a very high production quality when you see a national TV ad. That's kind of, I would say, also a similar comparison, right? Because if you're not, yeah.
Plus you can get influencer marketing in CTV, right?
Well, it's dependent upon the platform. Like, we work directly with Peacock, and they have very specific requirements to put an ad on Peacock, where Hulu or Sling might not be as restrictive or confined, and so that goes back to that quality.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where it's so fragmented right now. I think that's one of the biggest challenges in CTV. It's the thing that I keep hearing consistently. I don't know if it's going to get fixed anytime soon. But I think it's one of those things, is it creating its own individual walled gardens in data and measurement and things like that now too. So Emily, could you speak to any of that?
Yes, I could. Yes. So in my last role, I was selling identity graphs to all of the television networks. Now a lot of the networks and streamers are building their own graph in-house. So if you're a brand, in theory, you can tell if somebody's seen an ad on their phone, on Hulu, and on Amazon Prime on their TV, and on whatever. That's what an identity graph is, right? It's taking all of someone's devices, all of someone's data that they're putting out in the world, and reconciling it back to a person level or household level, in TV case, ID. So the networks are getting smarter, thus having a better viewing experience as far as frequency, or like, are you seeing the same category of ad constantly? You need to be able to tie all that data together, categorize it into a spine to make all of these things more intelligent. And I think that's happening now a lot. All the networks have one, a lot of the MVPs, the cable and satellite companies have one. So once you're mapping all these signals together, the viewer experience gets better. You're not seeing, like, remember when Hulu used to see the same ad 4 times in a row?
Yes.
But has that happened to anyone recently?
Yes.
It doesn't happen anymore. Really? Does it really?
Yeah.
Live
On
State
Hulu.
Farm.
When I
Jake,
stream
oh my
sports
gosh.
events,
There's
That's
a
interesting.
frequency problem.
But it depends on the platform again. Like Peacock,
They've gotten a lot better.
Yeah, Peacock is like a 60 to 90 second pod. That's it, and it's category separation. If you get like on a Hulu or Sling, ESPN, you're seeing some of these smaller ones where they don't have the reach, so
Yeah.
they're doing the frequency a lot higher.
Yeah.
So it does-
We're dealing with for my biggest client right now, where they're like, you know, she saw an ad over and over and over on CD, and she's like, well, like, this hasn't happened to us yet, but what can we do to prevent it? And so we're working on what you can do, and there are limitations, because if you think about the way that we all watch streaming, if you do watch streaming, chances are you're using multiple services, right? And we just talked about the different forms, right? There's the MVPDs, which are like the cable through the internet, and then you have the individual streaming apps, and then you have, you know, the different types that are just not connected. And so, yeah, I mean, data clean room, that sort of thing. We can kind of identity graph, and I know that like Disney is trying to push for that to like be like, okay, like give it, like let us trust us with your data, and we'll basically be your one centralized spine. But the reality is that it is an issue with the technology that exists with Connect TV as well. There's not cookies, so that's how they do frequency capping in digital. Since there's no cookies, you're not able to see if you serve the same person X amount of ads because that data doesn't exist there. So that's another issue. And I do think that one of the solutions is to spread it out a little bit more, right? So that way you're running across multiple streaming services and you're not concentrated fully on one. And some services are better than others, like you just mentioned Peacock, but if you want scale, you're most likely going to run on multiple, and it's difficult to control the frequency when you're running across all of these streaming services that aren't connected to each other.
I think it's also, and it goes back to the heart of what a lot of people in this room probably believe, right? Understanding your audience, understanding where they are, and how to reach them, right? I think it comes back to some of those basic principles that we've all been doing for years and years. But like, Andrew, in the industry, so the technology providers, when you work with one of the bigger ones, what are they doing, or have you heard any rumblings of what they're doing to kind of help battle fragmentation right now?
So, I mean, the fragmentation, it actually did consolidate a decent amount in the last couple years. I know the last time we spoke, there were like Discovery, merged with the CNN Plus app, which never really turned out to be a thing. They combined it to the Max app, right? Mm-hmm. So these conglomerates have merged their apps, like Disney and Hulu, and ESPN's coming out with an app. So they also merged into a single app. So you're seeing these super apps, right? And so where it's basically gotten down to from a singular app standpoint is the big networks, right? The Paramounts of the world, the NBCs of the world, the same ones that you would buy for cable, right? And then you have the actual big tech giants, Amazon, Netflix, Apple. Apple's actually the last one that doesn't have advertising, which is pretty interesting, but may or may not change. But so.
Are we going to take a poll? Who do you guys? Is Apple going to jump on board or not?
They will.
They're hard to take.
There's really not that much you can do beyond that, right? Because they are individual networks that are walled off from each other. So there's limitations, although there are precautions you could take with your buy to try to limit it. But generally speaking, outside of the consolidation, like that's really on the network side. From a technology standpoint, that there's not that much you could do, unfortunately.
Here's one thing I'll add, because I was at Univision for 5 years when we were building the VIC streaming platform. The dirty little industry secret that nobody really knows, if you go directly to NBC or you go to Univision or Paramount, they're all tapping into each other's inventory for the scale side. So you're going to have 60, 70, 80% that's going to be first-party inventory, and then the other 20% that's going to make up the reach, that's going to be third-party inventory, and they're all buying each other's inventory. So it's, even though the fragmentation's there, they're all doing the same thing. They're opening up their pipelines and they're saying, hey,
but they're keeping the analytics to themselves. Right?
Yeah, that's when you're buying third-party. You're not going to get that show-level reporting typically. Some of the lower funnel stuff, but you'll get it, with the first-party inventory.
There's no unified measurement solution that's being adopted by everybody. Right, and I think that you're seeing the networks trying to do that with the JIC, the Joint Industry Committee.
It's like a Nielsen thing.
So they're against Nielsen, right? Like Nielsen is like the old guard, and the JIC is like, oh, you guys aren't doing this good enough. They didn't really adopt to the streaming changes as fast as they would like, and they were like undercounting their audiences. So it basically is meant to combat that and to be a more true sense of the total reach of the campaign. That's their way of doing it. But Nielsen's not signing up for it. And a lot of advertisers that do TV buying still use Nielsen. Nielsen's having of their own solution. So there's not, and then you have these more advanced solutions like you see with like Samba TV and some of the other more new advanced ones which are using ECR technology, automated content recognition technology, which is totally different form of measurement than Nielsen's panel-based advertising. Measurement. So there's different methodologies that are being used, and there's different providers that are being used, and there's nothing that's really unified. And that's another reason why it's a challenge with being able to measure across your streaming buy, right? At least TV, you would use Nielsen. Like everyone used Nielsen. There wasn't much more of a competitor. Like everyone used the same ratings and stuff like that. With Connect TV, that doesn't really exist. It's fragmented.
So So as we look towards the future, because it's obviously growing, there's a lot more dollars being invested in, obviously, like measurement tools. There's new names coming up, right? Nielsen is not the only name in the game anymore. Let's take a poll on who's going to win that battle, by the way. I feel like I've got all these side bets going on now after this conversation. But like when we're talking about future trends, we have Gen AI, right? And how that's directly impacting content and creative. We have retail media making its play. We have all of these people that are getting into the game, Netflix included, Amazon, sports becoming a big part of this, which is like the only reason that my husband still has cable is so we can watch the New Jersey Devils. So now that all of these things, like Peacock had a big thing with football this year, how are all of these things going to play into what happens next? Andrew, you want to kick it off and then?
Well, I mean, I think that what you're seeing is already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Netflix's deal with the WWE. They're going to be hosting games during Christmas this year. You're seeing these big deals. Amazon with Thursday Night Football. Right? Peacock had that playoff game last year, which really pissed everyone off. But so you're seeing these exclusive deals, and as you said, a lot of times people are the last that are standing are news. People still watch news on cable, and then sports. Sports is migrating to streaming. So, and then you see the conglomerate that's being put together with NBC, Fox.
Well, that's with Hulu, right? Like, you know.
Well, they're doing I think it's even separate. So like it's like what are they calling it? They have a name for it. It's gonna be $50 a month, and you get access to all of like CBS, Fox, and NBC sports. But it's a standalone app, right? So like that's just what we need, right? Another app. Like we're talking about now, we're up to like a half a dozen if you want to watch your sports. So you might as well just bring cable back together, right? But so
It
I mean,
adds up to that.
yeah. So I mean, what I ultimately think is going to happen is you are seeing this consolidation around 5 major streaming apps. They're all going to just consolidate amongst each other, so that way it's super apps, right? And people are going to realistically pay for 5 apps probably. And if you want to get access to live sports, you're going to have those apps. So there's going to be a requirement. There's not going to be a single solution, most likely, like there was with cable.
So test. Does that sound familiar? Anybody?
Yes.
So Shane, what about on the content creative side?
I mean, you look at both sides of the fence. Content is king, right? Whether it's on the inventory side and you want to buy against it, or if it's on the creation side. I think we're seeing that really at the end of the day, all things are equal. Pretty much have access to any kind of audience you want. You can buy any kind of inventory you're out there, whether it's direct or through a DSP. So how do you differentiate yourself? It still comes back to that human element of creative and content and being able to tell a narrative, being able to tell a why, what's the value prop, why should you do business with me? That branding element is so critical and so important. So I don't think that's the great thing amidst all of this is that one principle doesn't change, is that you still need content and creative to differentiate and set yourself apart.
And then going into other updates, privacy. We hear privacy, especially with people in this room, constantly all day long. So, Emily, like, how important is first-party data in this play right now?
First-party data is very important. Data management is very important. This was the Astra sales pitch. Once you're gathering data from consumers and tying attributes to that, you know that someone's female and she's between 30 and 40 and she lives in the zip code. You need to classify your data so that if I opt out online, you opt me out on TV, you disassociate my all these attributes you have tied to me. You need the data management strategy is a lot more complex than I think the average Joe in advertising realizes. Now we also have all these state level laws like My Health, My Data out of Washington. Data is being restricted just for specific use cases. So you have to be able to go into your customer database and remove residents of Washington only for healthcare purposes. Mm-hmm. So it's becoming a lot more important to have a really hardy control of your data. You're not just in like get emails for a newsletter stage anymore. You need to you could get a CCPA, tracking request, you have to go back 12 months. You have to be prepared to do all of that if you're collecting data from the consumer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these privacy laws are poorly written and they haven't been litigated yet, so it's kind of like like right now we're in the game of each individual company's appetite for risk. How do you classify, how do you opt people out? So it's very important, regardless of the cookieless, signal deprecation. That's also important, but for privacy, you need to have all this first-party data classified and manageable for opt-outs on a state level until we have a federal standard, which probably won't happen anytime soon. So for anyone that's working directly with customers and collecting all that data, there's a lot of things you have to comply with that you didn't 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm going to ask everybody to start asking questions here in a minute, but can I ask you guys first, what questions, for everybody here in the audience that might want to work with a partner, get into Connected TV, learn more, what questions should they be asking their partners when they enter into this space?
It depends your metric for success. What's your, what can you measure? What outcome do you want to see with your advertising? The cost of media goes up the more targeted you make it. But if you just want to get your brand out there, maybe you don't need to do that. So I would ask them, what's your key metric for success? And then how do you, bells and whistles you can pull, data you can apply, measurement you can do, if that's going to be worth it for your brand. Or will you do something on the local level that you just want to get your name out there?
Yeah.
That's what I would start with. What's your metric for success?
Awesome.
Yeah, and are you asking about what you should be asking your client or
What
your
your
vetting?
client should be asking
Oh, okay.
prospective partners to
Yeah.
help them get into the business.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's clear for me that what you should ask is, what is your connection to the network provider, the actual network, right? Because what you see is a lot of these white labeled solutions, resellers that have popped up that claim to have all of this great inventory, but they don't have any actual connection to NBC, right? The further you go from the actual network, the more there's going to be middleman fees, and they're just reselling it, right? So what connection, you want to direct, as close as possible, direct connection to the actual network. Like, we want to be talking to Paramount, we want to be talking to Peacock, or we want to be talking to them directly, as opposed to going through a third party, because there's no real key advantage there, except for the fact that, I guess, they're managing on your behalf, but you're paying additional fees, and you have less control.
That's not guaranteed unless you really have a specific programmatic guarantee set up, but in most cases, for local businesses, like, you're not going to get access to that. So to this point, that visibility and transparency into what actual inventory you're buying and running up against, I think, is probably the most critical question you can ask.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to open it up. Go ahead, Chad.
Is the agency community, are they savvy enough? The CTV media buy, right? Are they people who came from digital? Are they people who came from broadcast? Where do they originate from? What skill sets do they have? Are they delivering for the brands?
Yeah, there was a lot of talk. There was a lot of fighting over that, for the last 5 years. It was like you have the TV buyers that are like, I came from a holding company, so I saw the internal. It's like, is it the programmatic team that should be doing Connect TV? Is it the linear TV team?
Yeah.
Or
is it its own team? I don't even know.
Yeah. So there was fighting over that. I think that where things have netted out is, it is a consolidated buy. It is the same team that's buying your linear buy as you are your Connect TV buy, and the reason for that is because that's what the networks are doing. So the networks, they no longer have the digital team and the broadcast team anymore. At least, that's where it's going. They have a singular team that's responsible for selling both Connect TV and linear TV, and a lot of times they're doing it in the same buy. So this is very apparent in the upfronts, right, where Connected TV is a huge part of it now, right? It was previously none of that. So if the TV buying team is going to the upfronts, well, they're most likely going to be buying both, and they're selling them in packages. So they've integrated their sales teams, and then the agency teams have naturally integrated that as well. Obviously, every agency is set up differently, but I think that's been the most common model, and that's kind of been flushed out over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we were at VW. We were buying CTV as a sixth stapler, right? And then you're seeing the publishers basically sell it as an extension of reach, the linear. So I think, though, on the local side, yeah, I think there's a little bit of catching up to do, and I think there's been a barrier of entry when you look at a trade desk as a local agency. Can I get a seat on what's that fee? And then I'm having to pay a fee on top of that is a percent of the media. We're working directly with NBC and building a self-serve portal specifically for smaller and local agencies to where they don't have to pay all those fees, but through us they can still get direct access to like NBC inventory. And so I think that's maybe a next iteration is you see like how can we cater and serve to the smaller local agencies at scale and do business that way.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add for Chet just to piggyback that a lot of teams, especially at the agencies, you're absolutely right. The linear buyers want to lose those budgets, so they form teams they're calling it addressable. So if you're looking at for those teams, a lot of them have branded as the addressable team, and so they didn't want to lose the budgets to digital.
So that means they're integrate. Are they integrated with search, social, influencer?
Well, they'll work to do those omnichannel campaigns, but those linear guys didn't want to losing budgets. They're not, so it's not digital, it's called addressable. They're working
Addressable
together.
media.
Yeah, because it's targetable and measurable, or addressable and measurable. Sorry, go ahead.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, hi, Jim Calico. So, yeah, I recently cut the cord.
Congratulations.
DirecTV, that's awesome. You can watch it anywhere.
Except you can't watch ABC on it at the moment.
No
ABC at the
moment.
No sound.
They're in blackout. They're doing negotiations for carriage agreements.
The biggest issue is they don't get Sports Channel. They don't get SNY, but they get my previous channel. Have to step up my life. So, but what I notice is, there are a lot of advertisers that you don't see on linear TV, like one of the ones. And I notice when I go to a website a lot, I'll see them on DirecTV, not DirecTV, on YouTube TV, right after. So there's clearly a connection between what they're doing online and following, like Viore as an example, which I'm on all the time when I see their ads. And I know they're not a regular TV advertiser. And I would think that the connected TV industry wants to get those smaller advertisers running, because when you look at the success of things like Facebook, Google, one of the reasons they're as big as they are, because every advertiser, big or small, is on there. And I was running a reasonably sized agency, Media Horizons, with big budgets, big creative budgets. Now I'm with BIN 113, we're specifically marketing for wineries and the wine industries. A lot of these are regional, have smaller budgets. I would love to get them on to Connected TV. I think it would be a perfect channel. Any suggestions on kind of the best way for smaller advertisers to get involved, particularly, I think as Chet mentioned before, the creative for TV can be expensive and a real obstacle. But any ways that you guys suggest to kind of put the package together between creative and media that's going to be kind of attractive to them or smaller kind of advertisers?
I think the challenge, and it depends again on which publisher or which platform you're working with. If you're looking at doing something direct, the challenge is, and NBC is a great case in point, where Linda Yaccarino was looking at their business model, and they're saying, we've got 3,000 clients generating $30 billion in revenue in the U.S. Conversely, if you look at, Amazon, Facebook, they've got, 30,000, 40,000 clients generating that same amount of revenue if you look at it apples to apples. The problem is the publishers, they don't have the operational bandwidth. That's where we came in as a technology company to say, look, we can help you go to tier 3. There's 17,500 new car dealers. They maybe have 200 of them because they can't process $5,000 packages, $7,500 packages. So you've got to find that right partnership with the company, and if you're going to buy direct or through a trade desk, finding that right relationship that will allow you to buy at the increments that you want to buy at. I think the creative side, again, and what we're seeing with a lot of streaming companies is like, my creative is making my performance deteriorate because the creative's not great. So they're looking for this other content solution as well that really helps marry those two worlds. I mean, not to self-promote, but that's kind of right where that space where we fit in is like, we see the need on both sides of the fence, right? Approaching the market very smartly and at a good entry price point, but having the content and creative that you're not going to pay a fortune for, but still going to deliver and be localized, specific to the markets, bridging that gap between national and local. So there are companies out there that do that. I think it's just a matter of really finding the right one.
I'll offer a suggestion. Spectrum, Reach,
That's
local
true.
advertiser,
Yeah.
they have a feature now in their self-service dashboard where AI generates creative for you. If
Whoa.
you don't have any, if you're a really local mom and pop. It's at the beginning stages, but, so I'm sure it's not that sophisticated.
Yeah.
However, I think that's where we'll see a
Yes.
lot of this kind of stuff. If you're just net new starting from nothing, you could get a graphics ad and that'll go along with your $10,000 local buy in just that market. So I think we'll get more sophisticated on the creative side, lower barrier to entry that way.
I would just say, quite simply, just choose a DSP, right? Because the DSPs have access to every network, right? Like, that's the way that you would get access to the entire streaming buy, and it's all centralized in one place. So, like, for example, and every DSP has this at this point, but you know, we have like relationships with every major Connect TV provider. So you can go into the DSP, select a whole bunch of private marketplace deals from NBC, Disney, all of them, and then you're getting access to all of them in one place. So that really makes that process a lot more streamlined. I have a client that is doing tens of millions of dollars who've just taken their digital assets and are running it in the Connect TV space. That's not best practice, but you can do it, you know? So, I mean,
Yeah. All right, guys, we are at time, so I'm gonna encourage you guys to give me a couple more questions in writing. I'll make sure to pass them on to our team. We really appreciate you guys coming out today. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And thanks again, you guys. Yeah, thanks, guys. All right. Oh, and you guys are all getting honorary members. Yeah, it's free, but it's still